Welcome back to Hardball. Those science deniers over in the GOP are getting served with another raft of scientific evidence that climate change is real and a big problem for everyone. An upcoming United Nations report outlined in New York and the New York Times will show, quote, scientists who were confident before have even more confidence that climate change is real, it's due to us, it's a threat to us, and the urgency to act is even greater than ever. Now enter the Republican Party, where proven science is merely one of a few theories.
Scientists all over this world say that the idea of human-induced global climate change is one of the greatest hoaxes perpetrated out of the scientific community. It is a hoax. There's no scientific consensus.
Carbon dioxide, Mr. Speaker, is a natural byproduct of nature. Carbon dioxide is natural. It occurs in Earth. It is a part of the regular life cycle of Earth. In fact, life on planet Earth can't even exist without carbon dioxide.
What is the Republican plan to deal with carbon emissions, which every major scientific organization has said is contributing to climate change?
George, the idea that carbon dioxide is a carcinogen that is harmful to our environment is almost comical. Every time we exhale carbon dioxide. Every cow in the world, when they do what they do, you've got more carbon dioxide.
I don't know what he's talking about. We're talking about a straw man. There you have Boehner, the Speaker of the House, coming out with something wacko when he talked to George Stephanopoulos saying it isn't causing cancer. Wait a minute. Nobody said that. He said it's causing climate change. Anyway, Oklahoma Senator Jim Imhoff, the worst of the breed here, has written a whole book denying science, subtly called The Greatest Hoax, How the Global Warming Conspiracy Threatens Your Future. Well, that's Imhoff. Ignore him. He's from the oil patch. Don't believe him on this. The problem is these science deniers help govern the United States. They have the job to tell us the truth. In Germany right now is Chip Saltsman, Republican strategist, who was Mike Huckabee's campaign manager in the 2008 presidential race, and Michael Mann, who's professor of meteorology at Penn State. He's author of The Hockey Stick and the Climate Wars, Dispatches from the Front Lines. Professor, are you available? Did you get your sound on there?
I think we've got it.
Okay, let me ask you about this. My sense is that climate change and evolution are like gravity. They're a fact. Drop a quarter, it falls. It's a fact. Don't argue about it. It's not one of the many theories out there. It is a scientific reality. And if somebody has some other standard besides science, I want to hear what it is. Business practices, religion. Tell me you have some other way of judging something besides the scientific method. As a scientist, is there any doubt that climate change is a problem and it's caused by man?
Well, there are few things in science that we're as certain about as the fact that we are warming the planet by increasing greenhouse gas concentrations through fossil fuel burning and other human activities. Maybe gravity, maybe there are a few other propositions in science that we have as high a level of certainty about as we have about this issue of human-caused climate change.
So what from your perspective, is the motive for questioning the science?
Well, unfortunately, the various talking points, and we heard some of them in the clips that you played from climate change deniers, often sound plausible. They sound reasonable to people who aren't familiar with science or the underlying science of climate change, but they have a very thin veneer of credibility. When you dig just a little bit beneath them, you find out that there's no merit at all to these various myths, these various talking points. So who are you going to listen to? Politicians who are advocating for fossil fuel interests, or the world scientific community, the U.S. National Academy of Sciences, founded, by the way, by a Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, which is firmly on record. Global warming is real, it's caused by us, and it represents a serious threat if we don't do something about it.
Chip Saltsman, looking at this politically from a Republican side, what is the argument that outweighs, accepted science?
Well, I'm not a scientist, and I don't play one on TV.
I know you aren't,
so
but I'm asking
what's
the other standard we should look at besides science? When we look at looking for something, whether it's true or not, is there some other way to judge it besides the science? And if there is, let me know what it is.
Yeah, I think the Republicans that I've talked to about this, when they talk about global warming, they say, look, we know that we've got 7 billion people on this planet using more resources than we did 100 years ago, 50 years ago. We know that we've got to make changes if we're going to sustain that. And I think there's a lot of Republicans out there that do believe in renewable energies and all that kind of stuff. They just don't buy into the total package that we're going into an apocalyptic point of view that global warming is going to destroy the earth as we know it. I think that's what
so they're taking a gamble. They're making a gamble that it's not. They think there's a decent stake in not acting.
Well, I think some of them are acting. I think there's a lot of conservationists.
No, but the people you say that it's not Armageddon. Okay, right. It's not apocalyptic. What basis do they have for saying that the challenge? What scientific knowledge do they have that they present against the scientific community of the world to make a case that it's not as serious as the scientists say it is? What evidence do they have to say that?
I'm not sure that I know of the evidence that they're talking about.
Well, then what does it mean to say it?
Well, Chris, what I'm talking about is the Republicans I'm talking about. From a political, you're asking me from a political point of view.
But what's their foundation? I'm asking from a political point of view. What's their political foundation to challenge the science? Is it religion? Is it the Old Testament? Is it commerce? What is it?
I think some of it is all the above. I think some of it is the economy. When you talk about cap and trade, they think that would wreck the economy as we know it. They don't want to do that. I think some of it is religious. The idea that man-made can destroy the world, I think that's something they think that God does, not what man does. So I think there's some of that all the above, Chris, and whether you agree with it or not, that's what they say.
Yeah, well, we had a potential nuclear war between us and the Soviets in the 1950s and 60s and maybe into the 80s that I knew, and you knew, Chip, could have destroyed the world. So let's not deny the potential of man to destroy the world. Professor, it seems to me that there is an anti-science bent out there. It's fostered by the argument, maybe the Old Testament, that says mankind has only lasted as long as the begats added up. Begat this, starting with Adam and Eve, all the way through the Old Testament into the New Testament. And yet there's evidence, scientific evidence, that mankind in some form or another has been on this planet for over 3 million years, going back to at least Lucy. So is there ever going to be a reconciliation of true human knowledge through science and true human acceptance of knowledge?
Well, as you heard Chip sort of allude to, there is a bit of a schism that I think is emerging within the Republican Party. There are those like the chairman of the House Science Committee, Lamar Smith, a Texan who denies that climate change exists, and he's the chair of the House Science Committee. I sometimes joke that maybe we need to rename it the House Anti-Science Committee, given its current stance on issues like climate change and evolution. But there are those scientists there are those politicians who completely dismiss the underlying science. But then you have more enlightened Republicans, like the former House Committee chair, Sherwood Boehlert, who was an old-school pro-science Republican, and you have folks like Bob Inglis, South Carolina.
He's gone.
A Republican, a conservative Republican. Well, he was primaried. He was primaried by the Koch brothers because he expressed an enlightened view about climate change.
Let me ask you a fair question, wide open. I won't challenge you, Chip. Is the Republican Party leaning towards science or against it?
Well, I would hope to say we always lean towards science, but on this case, like I said, there's many Republicans all across the board on this particular issue. There's, like I said, I'm not a scientist, so I don't read the book like our scientist on the thing does. But I really do believe that in the Republican Party, there's a lot that believe we know that we've got so many people living on this planet using limited resources. We got to do what we can.
I just hope people don't think that ignorance is bliss, that if you stay confused and you stay in the situation of keep saying it's in dispute, and you very carefully don't read the journals, very carefully don't accept the science, you're always in a safe position of saying, well, I always thought it was in dispute, so I guess I'm not really to blame. I think you are to blame, but not you, Chip, because you're a political strategist. Anyway, Chip Saltsman and Michael Mann. I do worry about Huckabee, though. Anyway, thank you, Professor, for coming on from the great university. I love Penn State. And we'll be right back after this with actor Eric Bana. He's coming on to talk about the cameras that are on all of us, especially in the big cities.